Is your child a sensory seeker? Pop your answer in the comments. Most children who are sensory seekers are undersensitive to sensory input. This means that they're actively seeking out sensory stimulation. A child who is sensory seeking is likely to exhibit sensory seeking behaviors through active stimulation of the body's different senses. This could look like a child jumping around the room, jumping off of things, spinning themselves around the room, getting in your face, or even continually touching things. This constant need to seek out sensory stimulation can cause the child to become dysregulated. Preventing dysregulation is as simple as understanding the unique needs that your child has when it comes to sensory input, and then allowing them to experience that sensory input in a structured environment. Seeking professional help early on can be very beneficial for the child's development and for the child's relationships. Parenting a sensory seeker often has unique challenges. Sensory seeking behavior is often misunderstood by others. A lack of understanding around sensory seeking behaviors and sensory seeking experiences can lead to frustration and confusion for some. For parents who have a child who is continually seeking sensory input, it can be exhausting, especially when those needs are not easily able to be met. Another challenge in parenting sensory seekers is overwhelm, which can then lead to sensory meltdowns. These meltdowns occur because the sensory system has been overloaded. Bright lights, sudden noises, uncomfortable clothing, all of these can trigger an extreme reaction from sensory seeking children. Some sensory seekers might prefer specific sensory inputs. This can be challenging for parents because it limits what can go into a sensory diet. It limits what can be used to provide sensory input into your sensory seeking child. Does any of this sound familiar? Sensory seeking behaviors can look like a child trying to jump from a high place down to a low place, a child jumping on a trampoline, or a child engaging in intense physical activity in order to fulfill the sensory input needs of the body. Sensory seekers often engage in repetitive movements like spinning around and around, swinging continually, things like that. These movements fulfill their body's need and desire for sensory feedback. A child bumping into walls, furniture, and people can often be a sign that your child is seeking deep pressure to help regulate. Constant touching of objects to experience different textures, and children who are constantly placing objects in their mouth, like clothing, pencils, things like that, things that shouldn't normally be in their mouth, are also signs that you may have a child who is seeking sensory input. So you may have a sensory seeking child. How many of these signs do you experience with your child? Strategies that can help sensory seekers are things like creating a sensory diet that incorporates sensory activities and sensory input throughout the day. In a classroom, it could be incorporating sensory activities into breaks between different things you're doing in the classroom. Another strategy can be using structured sensory activities, things like goal-oriented games that have a stop and start point. So this could be games like freeze tag. It could be games like red light, green light, things like that. They need to be activities that target vestibular and proprioceptive input. In a classroom, having transitions between various activities that focus specifically on sensory input can be really helpful for sensory seekers. Flexible seating and clear instructions are also things that will help sensory seekers in your classroom. So providing things like wobble cushions, different seating arrangements that children can use throughout their day will definitely help keep sensory-seeking children regulated and keep behavior to a minimum. Do you have any sensory seekers in your classroom? Have you got any strategies that you use in your classroom that you found helpful and can share with us? Understanding sensory seekers and their unique needs is the key to providing them with the appropriate support. I have 2 sensory seekers in my home, and both require different sensory input. Their sensory needs are not the same, and using the same tools for them is not always appropriate. So understanding the unique needs of your child will help you to gather together and to build a resource kit that's appropriate to your child and their needs. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe for more.